Okay, so in this very short video, quick start guide, we're going to look at the Staff Development Suite and how you can use this the Staff Development Suite of personality reports to actually coach and develop your staff. Now this applies to you if you're a line manager working with your own staff, or perhaps you're a coach who's come in from outside and you're working with someone else's staff. So the terms are interchangeable, just to adapt to suit your own particular situation. Now there are several report designs to choose from, and you may use one or more of these report designs with each staff member. So rather than give you one great big report where a lot of it won't be relevant and could even be distracting, we break it down into smaller manageable components so you've a lot more control and flexibility over it. So here's the suite as it stands right now. There are 7 in the suite. These are all different personality reports. They all contain different content, and very briefly we have an overview which is really gets you started. This is essentially who you are. Now all the reports are written to the staff member, the person who actually completes the personality questionnaire. So it's written to that person with them in mind and for their benefit. Now naturally we would expect that report also to be read by the line manager and perhaps by the coach if there's a coach involved. But they are designed to give and hand to the person who completed the questionnaire, in this case, the staff member. So we'll look at overview, and we then look at the communication. Communication is a huge issue in most workplaces, and there's a lot of personality that is affecting personality type. As you know, the psychology of personality is a huge influence on how we communicate and why it all goes so wrong. So again, that can be very useful. If you're working with some of your staff on sales and trying to develop their ability to sell, then the sales report specifically looks at that and the various issues, again, on personality. We're not looking at any sales techniques, or it's not a sales training guide. That's not what this is about. This is purely looking at the individual aspects of their personality that would pertain in a sales situation. And you would need to understand that, and from that understanding you can work with them to come up with some ideas to help them improve and increase their sales. Work environment's a big issue. One of the biggest challenges we see in every organisation that we look at is a mismatch between an individual's personality type and the actual work environment that they find themselves in, and that leads to so many problems within an organisation. So as a good line manager or a coach, you're always looking at how you can ensure that the work environment that you're putting people into is working for them, and it's not something that they find toxic, and that's very much a personality issue. So a work environment that is perfect for one individual may be toxic for the next, and it's purely down to personality. So again, this personality report will give you a great insight into what each staff member needs, and although it might surprise you even at this stage, we usually find that there's a lot of very small adjustments, compromises that any organisation can make that can make a vast improvement into that work environment compatibility once you understand where you're trying to get to, and that's what this report looks at. We'll then look at customer service, and of course, you know, personality is a huge aspect, huge influence on how one approaches customer service. And again, if you're a line manager or a coach and you're wanting to improve the customer service levels that each of your staff provide, then understanding who they are fundamentally and what will really help. And all the personality content on that report does pertain specifically to customer service situations. We then move over to this one, which is quite an interesting one, which is results, stress and motivation. So we're looking at primarily the positive side of this is results. We want to see how we improve and increase the results that we achieve with each individual. So we'll look at that aspect of them. But the other flip side of that coin, if you like, is stress, and the thing in the middle is motivation. So all those 3 issues are related in here. That's why they're all included in this one report. So I say if you're looking at increasing results, reducing stress, increasing motivation, increasing engagement, all that side of things, then this report will help you understand what's going on, and therefore you'll be able to come up with ideas that can move things forward. Then finally, we're looking at teams. Now, individuals are complex, but put 2 or more individuals together on a common team, then it gets very complex. And this will help you understand the individual, how they are in a team, how their personality affects how they are in a team, and what their best contribution is in that team. And again, PeopleMaps' take on this is that every human, by its very nature, is a team player. But everybody has something different to contribute to the team, and although some people might not look like team players on the surface, it's mainly because we don't really fully understand what their contribution to the team is. So this report will really help you clarify that situation and get your teams and working more effectively by having those individuals understand themselves and how they impact on a team and what they can contribute there. Okay, so that's the suite. You will require 1 credit per report per person. So if you want to use 2 report designs with 1 person, then you'll need 2 credits. If you want to use 1 report design with 2 people, you'll need 2 credits. That's how it works. Now, each report contains different content. So they are all different. And each report is a combination of personality text content, so a few paragraphs describing aspects of the individual in text form in a few paragraphs, and gauges. And here's an example of a gauge pair here, and there are literally dozens and dozens of gauges included in this suite. So the gauges are really useful. The higher the score on the gauge, so if you look at this example on the left here, 92, that's a really high score for prefers to make own decisions. So because that's a high score, 92, that statement is very true for this individual, prefers to make own decisions. Whereas if we look at the other score, which is 16, so that's a very low score, willing to trust others' decisions. Well, clearly that's not true. That statement is not very true for this person because they are not really that willing to trust the decisions that other people make. So that's how the gauges work. Very simple device, and there's no interpretation required here. You literally can see what it says, and then now you know that, you can then go and talk about that and make some other decisions. The reports themselves are written in plain English and no interpretation is required. It's not invited, it's not required. That's not how PeopleMaps operates, and I know that's quite different from other systems, but you've got to go in a big course and you've got to then get a bunch of data and then interpret that data to try and draw a conclusion. Well, PeopleMaps, you don't have all those issues. Just read it, you know what it means, you know what it says, you know what you're supposed to do with it. So I say the beauty here is that no training is required to actually understand and use the report. So you can literally get started, get using it right away. There is no learning curve or setup time. It's really, really quick. So the first thing you do when you log into your control room, and you've probably been given an actual demo by this stage, you should certainly spend at least 5 minutes on the phone with somebody from PeopleMaps just to get a quick, okay, how does this work? And then you'll be up and running. But so really the first thing once you've done that really is to go into your library, go into your control room, click on library and select one of those 7 report designs and activate it. That's really as simple as that. And you can chop and change what's activated at any time. That's really quite easy. And again, you'll see all that in an actual demo, which you must absolutely do. Don't flounder about, just somebody will show you how all that works in a couple of minutes. You can also go to the library, and this is important. You can go in your control room, click on library, and you'll be able to open samples of each report so you can see exactly what's in each report, and that will help you decide which ones you really want to use if you're not sure or the titles aren't obvious enough for you. So I say the gauges themselves, I've already talked about these, but let me explain how we recommend that you actually use them. I say there's no interpretation here. You can see, so if that's looking at this individual here, it's absolutely crystal clear that this person likes to make their own decisions. That's all you need to know about that. That tells you exactly that's what it's telling you. Now, that'll have its own implications in terms of if you're the line manager and clearly you're making the decisions, well, you know right away that, okay, this person's going to have a different approach to that. Now, some people will be completely happy with you and the decisions you make. This person maybe needs a bit more than that. They maybe need those decisions explained to them. So this, if you're having problems with this individual, it could be something as simple as this, that you're making decisions and they're not getting involved in them, and it's not helpful, and maybe you therefore need to work through that with them and see if you can resolve that. Okay, so what do you do when you do get a low score on the gauge? So in this case here, the low score being willing to trust others' decisions, which clearly this person does not. So what do you do if you come across that situation? Well, the first thing is to decide if the issue is actually important or even relevant to the job, to your situation, right? To your absolutely specific situation. It might not be. It might just not be relevant at all. And I say there's lots and lots of gauges here, and it's unlikely that all of them are going to be that relevant to what you're really doing. There'll be some that are really, really important, but many will not be. So decide first of all if this is something that's that important. Now, if it's not, then don't worry about it. Just move on. Just go on to the next pair of gauges, deal with other stuff. And you should absolutely know that every single person has low scores. Right? Nobody scores high for everything. Nobody. So it's absolutely natural. That's perfectly fine. You're just being made aware of things. Now this part's really important, and this is a little counterintuitive, and you may wrestle with this. So let me be very clear. The third law of personality states that you can't change your personality or anyone else's. Behaviour, yes, it can be changed from minute to minute. We're all in control of our behaviour, what we choose to do right now, but that is different from a personality, and our personality remains consistent. A personality rarely changes across our entire lifetime, is the truth of it, even though our behaviour is all over the place. So you're never going to improve someone's gauge score, so don't be tempted, don't be sitting there thinking, oh, you're only scoring 20 for this, I want to see you up at 40. That's not how this works. Gauge scores shouldn't change even in a lifetime. It is not the point. That's not what you're trying to do. So please do not attempt that. And I know it's a little counterintuitive, but that's not how personality works. So what do you do if the score is relevant and it's something that's low, let's say, and you want to actually address the issue? So, well, the first thing, of course, is awareness. And awareness really is hugely powerful. So as soon as you are aware as their line manager or their coach that's there, but also they might suddenly become aware, they might not really be aware that actually they have a fundamental issue with the decisions that other people make. Regardless of who it is or what the situation is, it's always something that they have an issue with. That's totally fine. Being aware of that can really help even before you start to do anything. Now, say this suite of reports is written to the individual, it's to them. So make sure you give them a copy of the report, because I say the awareness starts from them reading the report, and it's almost guaranteed they're going to read something in that report that's going to put a light bulb on. It's going to make them go, oh, I never really realised that, but now that I see that, yeah, I totally get that. And that's the experience we've seen for 20 years. Quite often the report is verbalising, is crystallising something that the person's maybe always kind of felt but never been able to express, but as soon as they see it written down, they recognise it as truth. And that's really useful and quite a fascinating thing to get involved with. So make sure they've got a copy and give them some time to read it and go through it before, and then really, and I can't stress this enough, make some time to actually just chat with them about the report. Encourage them to make some notes, encourage them to identify what they agree with strongly in the report, get them to print off the report, maybe mark up what they disagree with or what they'd like to talk about. All of that is really useful in its own, even before you do anything with that information. And this all comes under the awareness. Incredibly useful and very powerful. And I say often, just being aware of something is often enough to solve it in itself. And that is a fascinating aspect of personality. It's not going to change the person's personality, but the person, remember, can always modify a behaviour, especially when they're aware of something and its possible impact, and therefore they want to see a different outcome, then there's changes can be made. Now they say the staff member will become more aware, as will the coach or the line manager. So if you're a line manager who's actually embarking on some sort of coaching and support program, you're going to learn stuff about your staff that even if you worked on for 20 years, you never knew. It will give you a level of insight and clarity that just simply doesn't come about in your average everyday going about work relationships. So it can be very useful for you and for the individual. And I would have to stress this as well, just to spend time with a staff member chatting, where you're actually using the report as a catalyst for that chat, is incredibly valuable in itself. There's often an argument and a case made that for people just going to the doctors, not so much for the medications or for anything else, but just for the fact that someone sits and listens to them for 10 minutes in a world where nobody else ever listens to them, has health benefits on itself. And sadly, they're not really, they're kind of ignored in the great scheme of things. But in what the humans feel is value in that, and there's value here by you being able to sit down and talk to a staff member. And I say the report gives you a catalyst and a framework for that conversation, so that it's not uncomfortable or awkward or difficult for either party. So both the line manager and the staff member can really benefit from that simple chat. Talk to them about what they agree with in the report and what they disagree with, and it's perfectly okay for them to disagree with some of the stuff in their report. In fact, you'll probably learn more about the things they disagree with, and you'll be able to explore those than not. So don't feel you need to defend the report. It's okay, it's not your report, it's somebody else's, and it's perfectly fine for them to go, I don't agree with this thing. Oh right, why not? What do you think it should be? Any examples? Help me understand why you think you don't agree with that. That's great. And that's really useful. Those conversations will be so valuable to you and to the staff member. Okay, so that's awareness. The second step is mitigation. So what do we mean mitigation? Well, this is quite simply where, let's take an example, myself as an example, and this is a very simple example I use all the time. Attention to detail, right? So I am not naturally detailed. So the best thing for me to do when it comes to detailed work is mitigation, which is not to place myself in a situation where I have to be detailed. That's mitigation. And thankfully I managed to do that. I don't deal with a lot of detailed work anymore. I no longer code or get involved in that side of things, because there's other people in my organisation which are much, much better at those details than me. So it makes sense for them to deal with those details and leave me to do other things. So that's mitigation, and you'll be amazed at how much stuff you're asking an individual to do that they absolutely hate. They really find it painful. They're really poor at it. And mitigation would be possible where you go, actually, you don't need to do that. Let's get somebody, they'll do that. You don't need to do that because you're clearly, that's not you. And they'll have no problem with that. So that's mitigation. And sometimes a line manager, if you can move some of the pieces, take a little something off somebody else and give it to somebody who won't have any issues with it, that's a fantastic contribution as a line manager, and the individual will feel such a delight when they no longer have to do something that doesn't fall into their natural preferences or set of abilities. And if mitigation isn't possible, and let's face it, we're in the real world and there's a lot of stuff we just have to bite the bullet and do, then the third step is policy. We need a policy. Now, I'll go back to my simple example. The policy for me, if I have to deal with detail work, I do have a policy, and my policy is this. I know I'm not that detailed, so my awareness is kicked in. I can't mitigate. Okay, so I need to bite the bullet and actually deal with some detailed work. First thing is, I keep my time limited to about half an hour, 40 minutes. I can kind of deal with details in those small chunks of time. If I have to sit for longer than that, then I start to the accuracy starts to suffer, and I start to lose the plot. So again, policy, keep it in short bursts. The second thing I would do is I would try and get somebody to check it. That's another part of the policy. Is there somebody else going to be able to have a look over this once I have finished it? Another thing I'll do is, of course, I will check it 2 or 3 or more times to make sure that I've caught the typos and whatever else needs to be done. So again, I check it more than perhaps I would have if my awareness wasn't there. So those are all policy decisions. And no matter what the situation is, everybody often unconsciously already comes up with some sort of policy, but this allows you to create very specific policies for very specific reasons, and that suddenly can improve performance overall at an incredible rate. So that's what you're looking at, and that's the 3 steps to that. Okay, so finally, we're just about to wrap up now, and outcomes. So any coaching program, any initiative, of course, should have some sort of outcome, right? You want to do something different tomorrow than you did today because of what we've just experienced and learned. So, and that's no different in this scenario here. So with each report, each of these sessions that you're working with, then it simply boils down to, okay, so who's going to do what and by when? Now that might be the staff member, they're going to have to do something, and you should know when they're going to have to do it. It might be you, the line manager, perhaps, that has to actually do something and by when. So again, this allows you to make a commitment to actually taking some action and doing something and making some changes, because if we don't actually make a decision to change something, then we just get more of the same. And again, what specific outcomes are you aiming for, and how will you measure them? And again, this very simple but crucial part on any initiative tends to get missed out, and we all just go, oh, that was really interesting, and just nothing really happens. So to avoid that situation, what measurable outcomes are you looking for? Jot them down. Be accountable to each other. Line managers should be accountable to the staff member and vice versa, and come up with something that you all agree with. And then, of course, you'll have some review period because you've talked about a when. So when that time comes again, you both should be able to sit down and say, okay, did we do what we said we would do? And chances are you'll have done some of it, maybe not done all of it, but at least you're working towards it. Now again, you can repeat this process. If you're using each of the reports in the suite, you can use them like a training framework, because these are such big issues that almost everybody has issues with. Every organisation suffers in some level, and every individual with issues pertaining to what we've covered in the staff development suite, that it's probably all useful and relevant, and you can work your way through all of it. Now you get to pick and choose what order and all that sort of stuff, but you just repeat this entire process each time you use a different report in this suite. Okay, so that's us. That's just been a wee 20-minute training session, but with this I think you can actually go and make a huge difference to you as a line manager. If you're the line manager, definitely you can make a huge difference to staff and what their experience of work is. And if you're a coach, of course, then you will probably hit the ground running much, much quicker because of this deeper level of understanding, not just that you have, but each staff member has too.